Welcome to the second part of my video about 10 games that I enjoyed the most in 2013. I gave you a little bit of an intro, let's get started now. Number 10, position 10 is for All Things Zombie Final Fade Out by 2 Hour War Games. This is a miniature war game. It is a set of rules for miniatures. You will have to provide your own miniatures, your own scenarios, your own terrain. But other than that, the system does everything. It is based on a system created by 2 Hours War Games that's a system that has been very successful, implemented in many different settings, and it is something that people tend to love immensely. They just completely fall in love with it, and it's hard for them to play anything else, or people don't click, don't develop a chemistry. It's a pretty unique system. That you, the player, tend to be not exactly the controller of all of your characters, of all of your miniatures, but of one or two heroes in a group. Then even the other miniatures on your side, they're not entirely under your control. They represent characters that are not as competent as the main heroes, do not always follow orders, do not always do what you would like them to do, and when you would like them to do this and that. You really have the sense that you're the leader of a team that you cannot entirely trust, and then of course you have the opponent, which in this case are zombies, and those you really can't trust, or you can trust them that they will try to make soup out of you, but other than that, they're zombies, what can I say? It's a great game. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I like the narrative possibilities, the storytelling possibilities that this system has, the unpredictability that comes from not being able to control your characters entirely, which is probably one of the things that the people that don't like the game mention as the main cause why they think that there is too much chaos in the game. I don't find that there was much chaos, not more than I expect there would be when you have a group of survivors that are not trained, they're not heroes, that are dealing with the mess of the zombie apocalypse. I think there would be a lot of mess there, a lot of things that would happen that people don't intend for those to happen. To me, makes perfect sense. I played it with paper miniatures, so it was very inexpensive, and I really had a lot of fun. All Things Zombie Final Fade Out by 2 Hours War Games, number 10 in my top 10 here. Number 9 is not exactly a war game, it is a combat game, and it is Mage Wars. Duels between mages. Now we have several characters that have been added to the base set. We have the Necromancer, the Druid, other characters like that. The idea is you are one of these two mages are in this arena, and you summon your own monsters, your own minions, you cast spells, you use different types of attacks, you create things that modify the terrain, for example, plants that entangle the opponent, walls of fire, walls of a lot of different stuff. Different mages can build walls with different things. The idea overall is the one that you have in Summoner's Wars, but as I said in my main review, Mage Wars is Summoner Wars after it went to grad school and it got a PhD. The general idea is the same, but there is a level of sophistication, of complexity, of thematic richness, which just brings the game to an entire new level. Really, it is a game with a PhD. Yes, it is more complex to play, but not much so. And while it's not much more complex to play than, say, Summoner Wars, it is 10 times more fun. So the investment in time for learning this game is definitely worth it. You can customize your characters immensely by creating different spell books from game to game. Lot of fun, super thematic, fantasy at its best, definitely a fun game, not a war game, but I really had a good time playing this game, and I wanted to mention it in my top 10. Number 8, we go back to war games proper, and we have a game by GMT, which is called Pax Baltica. I played it very early in 2013. I still remember with great pleasure playing it. It is about the Great War of the North that revolved around the conflict between Sweden, that had become increasingly powerful throughout the 17th century, and a coalition of other countries pounding against Sweden from different directions, from different sides. Very unequal gameplay, by which I do not necessarily mean unbalanced. I mean that the different sides play in different ways, because you have Sweden, which is this sort of like beast monster, large army, powerful army, excellent army. And then you have a coalition of other states or other countries, each of which individually wouldn't be able to do much against Sweden, and so you really have to coordinate the attacks from different directions in order to reduce the power of Sweden in Northern Europe, which is the very point while this war happened. Tons of historical flavor, different countries play in different ways, and you really have this incredibly intense action because the countries activate, then they may get out of the game for a while, then they come back. You even have minor players such as the Ottoman Empire that stop by and pay a visit and do some actions and create more complexity. Complexity here, not in terms of things being difficult, but of things being fascinating and multi-layered. Pax Baltica, intense historical, great historical feel, a lot of chrome, fluid gameplay, a game that I definitely enjoyed. Next game up is the number 7, and that is another game by GMT. Very unique game. Is it a war game? Is it not? I have no idea. The name war, the word war is in the title, Navajo Wars. It is an historical game that simulates the adventures and struggles of a group of Navajo families over the centuries. It's very hard to describe this game. It doesn't really resemble many other games that I played before, but it's great. It has a very unique system, very unique mechanics. The way I described it in my original review was as a time machine, because there are a lot of rules and mechanics that are completely unheard of, that I hadn't seen before. This is why absorbing the game, it took me a long time and quite some effort, because it was so different from other things. But then also the result was a game experience that was indeed different from others, from pretty much anything else that I played, and it had one of the strongest feelings of historical immersion that I have ever had from a game. Again, this is why I describe this as a time machine. It's complicated, it's somewhat complicated to make it work, but then it does transport you back in time, and now you are within a different historical context, seeing things from the point of view of the people that live there, and then it is a fascinating experience. And this is for my number 7, Navajo Wars by GMT. Number 6, we have another game by GMT, and this time this game is Rebel Raiders on the High Seas, a game about the American Civil War, and in particular about naval operations during the American Civil War. That is, struggles along the rivers during the American Civil War between different types of warships, and then also naval warfare along the coasts, and also operations from the north to block the raiders that are living the south and going to trade around the world in Europe and Africa, and then coming back delivering goods, and of course trying to sneak past the blockade. So you have different levels of action. They all are centered around the theme of war and naval warfare, from direct warfare, attacks to ports, and again hunt for raiders. You have different types of actions going on, many different types of ships, and just again a very strong historical sense. You see how the coasts of the United States become increasingly fortified over the time. The action becomes more and more problematic for the South as the pressure that comes from the North becomes increasingly strong. A game that, again, combines complexity with thematic richness. Here I would say that the complexity is not all that hard. Maybe the rulebook could have been written a little more streamlined, but pretty much everything is there. But again, then the entire experience that you see here is extremely rich, is extremely fascinating. You see a depiction of the American Civil War from a slightly different angle from the one that you have usually. Land operations are still there. They're somewhat a little more on the frame as opposed to in the center of the picture, which is usually what happens in general games about the American Civil War. The land operations is in the middle, and then the naval operations are on the frame. What I want to say is it's the opposite of what happens. You simply switch the focus, you play this game, and then you play a game based mainly on land operations, and then you really have a two-dimensional representation of the conflict. But great fun. Tense game as the two sides push one against the other along rivers and try to figure out ways to cut communications, to strengthen different areas. The opponent may try to attack those areas or go past those. A lot of complexity that comes out, a lot of options. The map does a good job in creating opportunities and challenges. I loved it. Rebel Raiders on the High Seas. Then we have number 5, which is another miniature game. This time one they play with miniatures, with the actual miniatures that the manufacturer released, not with paper miniatures. This game is Bushido. I loved Bushido enormously. I can't wait to play it again. I have a bunch of miniatures that have been professionally painted. They should be delivered to me soon. I can't wait to play Bushido more. It is a game set in a fantasy medieval Japan, so with the mix of historical base figures, mythological base figures, ghosts, monsters, zombies, dragons, characters that do martial arts, but they definitely look like they're coming out from a martial arts movie. It's sort of like a hybrid of things that are cool about fantasy Japan, let's put it that way. What I really like about this game is the flexibility of the turn structure and the way in which you can use your actions. You can use actions to activate your characters to perform major actions, but then of course they perform less stuff. You can split the energy that the character has in a turn to perform multiple minor actions. The combat system is really fun because every time that two characters are fighting, both characters participate. The defender takes on an active role. The defender has to choose how to defend against the attacker. There are options that the defender has to choose from. So it is always your turn. It is never entirely the player's turn, because even during the player's turn, you do have to make some key decisions. And those key decisions are not just a matter of resource management like you have in so many games. Should I use my magic spell now or later? They also are a matter of knowing your opponent. It is a matter of making double blind decisions, and you have to try to figure out what the opponent is going to do. You have to bluff what the opponent is going to do. In that, you really had the sense of a martial arts movie in which the two fighters definitely are trying to figure out what the other opponent is going to do, or trying to trick each other. This is captured beautifully in a system that is very streamlined, very easy to play, has a ton of exciting moments, miniatures that are absolutely gorgeous. Bushido is definitely my favorite miniatures game for 2013, possibly my favorite one, definitely one that I enjoyed enormously. Now we go to number 4. We are getting in the really closer to the top. Number 4 is not a war game. It is, in a similar fashion to Mage Wars, a combat game with a fantasy theme, but without exactly being a war game in the strict sense. This game is Mythic Battles. Oh my gosh, I love this game so much. It is combat, fantasy combat in a Greek mythology inspired universe. You have characters that come from Greek mythology, more or less, or they have been made up. They look much cooler than the characters that we imagine in Greek mythology, because they have this super cool art, they have these super cool skills and superpowers. Characters play in very different ways. There is a deck management component to activate your characters. So you draw cards from a deck, and then you use those cards to activate your characters. Some characters will activate more often, some less. You have options to use your activation cards in multiple ways, and more decisions you have to make in a game, the better the game is. And this is a game that really gives you a ton of decisions. The combat system is very simple, but it feels pretty deep, and therefore it is rewarding. One of the things that I like the most in this game, and that really sets it apart from a ton of other games in which you have your characters with a lot of stats and they fight. You gave me a wound, my character loses 2 life points. Maybe I have to take into account some modifiers, think about it, add tokens to calculate the modifiers, and I attack back, whatever. Here we have a much more fluid way of keeping track of the way in which the psychological and physical condition of the characters changes throughout the fight. How is that done? Simply by representing each character with a stack of cards, not with a single card with stats, but a stack, a card for each level of health. Say there's a character that has 8 points of health, then the character has 8 cards. Takes a wound, you take that card, the top card, you put it at the bottom, then the one on top is the one that represents having 7 points of health. Takes a wound, put it at the bottom, another one on top is 6 level of health. But the point is that as you move these cards to the bottom or to the top as your character heals, the other stats also change. That means that your armor may weaken, you may not be able to activate as often, your characters are not as good as before at attacking, they lose the ability to use some skills. But what is fantastic is that you have so much complexity, so many things happening, such a rich theme that happens without you having to worry about any bookkeeping whatsoever, without keeping track of anything. Done. You have checked 6, 7 stats, changed the one that apply, brought your character to the new situation without having to worry about anything, just by doing this. This to me is great. It is really one of the things that I like the most about the game, on top of everything else. The art is great, the action is tense, the interaction between the deck component and what happens on the board is just phenomenal. Mythic Battles, I highly recommend it. It's definitely one of the best games that I played in 2013, one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. It is the number 4 of my video about the top 10 games of 2013. Number 3. Now we really get close to the top, and this is the bronze medal that goes to 1775 by Academy Games. This is the sequel of 1812. I know, it happens earlier, it is still the sequel. And it is a game about the American Revolution. I loved 1812, but 1775 is just so much better. It's a completely different level. The base mechanics that you have in 1775 are there. There is a deck that regulates resources, activations, and things that you can do. Units are represented by cubes on a board. Each faction, and there are 4 factions, each faction has a different set of dice, and those dice are different, so different dice will give the factions the opportunity to perform different actions. That means that, similar to what happens in Mythic Battles, you do not have to worry about remembering too much the stats or what your characters do exactly. You just need to think of them in terms of theme. You roll the dice and the characters will do more or less what they should do historically. The dice make the theme happen so that you can concentrate all of your efforts and energies on gameplay. The map is fascinating because it offers possibilities for a lot of actions to happen all around. There are multiple fronts, and as soon as a front has been disintegrated by one of the two sides, or in any case the front moves in one direction. Then you may have another front that opens unexpectedly in a completely different area. For example, if the Americans are concentrating the defenses in the north, then the British may choose to attack the south and start a new front there. The fact that the British can land, who knows where they can land, those crazy people, they have the entire coast that they can choose to land, and that creates, of course, a lot of tension in the game because the American has to prevent multiple fronts from happening. The British has at the same time to be careful not to open too many fronts, because if you send a small expedition all alone in the deep south and you don't reinforce it later, then that expedition remains isolated and it will be exterminated without too much effort. But the fact that the action moves around the map continuously, that makes the game very exciting, and it just switches the center of attention of the game. Different areas of the map become incredibly interesting all of a sudden, and then incredible action happens somewhere else, and you have to deal with this pretty much with this mess. 1775 by Academy Game. Very simple game, again, in a way almost a hybrid between a Euro game a la Shogun and a war game, but it represents a conflict that I'm very interested in a way that I'm interested in playing. So absolutely fantastic game. Number 2, Silver Medal, goes not to a full game but to an expansion. Hornet Leader, the Cthulhu Conflict. I am a huge fan of Hornet Leader. I am a huge fan of Lovecraft. You put these two things together, of course, what comes out as a complete masterpiece. Don't be such a purist. Don't be horrified. If you're a Grognard, then you may be horrified that there are monsters in here. If you're a Lovecraft fan, you may be horrified that this game deals with the present, actually with the future, not with the Roaring 20s. So what? Cthulhu and the Ancient Ones are immortal. So if they were around in the 20s, they had been around for millennia, and they will be around in 10 years, 20 years. And when they wake up, we're in big trouble. There will be a conflict that is obvious. You should know it. You should stop being in denial. Finally, we have a game that allows us to train ourselves to the situation. Hornet Leader, the Cthulhu Conflict, takes the engine of Hornet Leader, which is just a phenomenal solitary game of air combat, definitely one of my favorite games, period, and adds this fantasy, sci-fi, horror theme. Now, your pilots are going against the ancient horrors that the warped mind of Lovecraft created or discovered, like somebody think. And it's just great. Hornet Leader was fun already, having these horrendous monsters that create all sorts of challenges for your pilots. That is just great. There is really so much theme here. The game captures well one of the most wonderful things in the Lovecraft universe, which is madness, which is how being exposed to the complete otherness, complete incomprehensibility that the Ancient Ones are, brings the human mind to the brink of madness, and sometimes over the brink of madness. So you have this paradox here that the more you fight against these people, the more your mental health is in danger, the less effective you become, in a sense. Try to fly an aircraft when your schizophrenia is going through the roof, but at the same time, the madness is the only way in which the Lovecraftian horrors can become sexualized. So actually, madness gives you insights and glimpses of quote-unquote understanding into the otherness of these monsters. So in a nutshell, what happens is that your pilot's becoming crazy as the game progresses. Thematically, from the narrative point of view, this does wonders in making the game more interesting and more challenging. It's excellent. It is just so excellent. The components shine. They're just beautiful. The gameplay is as tense as Hornet Leader has ever been, with the added bonus of having an immensely cool theme that is captured perfectly well. There is more chaos than in the regular Hornet Leader, but this is the theme. What do you expect? I think that an increased level of chaos here, again, suits the theme well, and it's not a sacrifice that gameplay makes because, oh well, we want to capture the theme, gameplay is going to be a little less interesting, but it is going to be more thematic. No, what we have here is that it captures the theme better than a different type of gameplay, and it is still incredibly enjoyable. It is not a compromise, it is a perfect match between theme and mechanics. Over in the leader, the Cthulhu Conflict. This was the number 2 of my top 10. Now we get to the number 1. Golden medal goes to Fading Glory. Fading Glory by GMT, a game of Napoleonic warfare. This is the GMT implementation of a system that was originally published by Victory Point Games. The system is Napoleonic 20s. The name comes from the fact that the theme is Napoleonic and the fact that usually there are around 20 counters on the board at all times total. So each side controls 10, 12 counters, no more than that. Minimalistic approach to wargaming, almost like Japanese gardening type of wargaming. Incredibly effective, incredibly simple, yet with so many decisions, with so many tense moments. The game revolves around a core of rules which is so simple that then it is very easy to add special rules for each scenario, to customize the rules to really make them fit different battles, different contexts, different situations, and that means that the game can be highly thematic because you really manage to give you the sense of a fight that works in a certain way, in a certain condition, in a certain landscape, at a certain time, which is different from another Napoleonic fight, another battle that happens in a different situation, a different condition, different place, etc., etc. The simplicity of the core rules allow for customization that creates a lot of theme without making the game complicated at all. Fast, furious, incredibly intense, incredibly thematic, incredibly easy to teach. It could be an introductory war game. At the same time, I played the game with the seasonal grognards, and very few, actually absolutely no one ever told me that the game was too simple for them. Everybody just enjoyed it. It has this miraculous balance between simplicity and elegance and theme. It is definitely a remarkable effort. And if the game is a little too simple for you, then you have all sorts of optional rules that you can add to make the game more complicated. I use almost none of those just because I love the core system so much. The game, Fading Glory, is a quadri game. 4 games included in this package. Huge value for your money. Beautiful components, definitely an upgrade from the components that the original games published by Victory Point Games had. Just a masterpiece. Fading Glory, 4 games of Napoleonic warfare with a simple core engine and an immense value in terms of playability and fun. Does end my video for my favorite games of 2013. As I said in my intro, this year has been a busy one to say the least, but I still managed to play a game or two, as you can see from this video. Again, I still had trouble choosing the 10 best ones, which is a good sign. 2014, I'll do my best to play as much as I can. A lot of things will come in my way, but this is a great passion for me, playing games and sharing my passion with others through my videos. It's something that I love doing it. If you don't see me on the net as often as before, it is not because I'm neglecting the hobby, but it is because of higher powers preventing me from doing so. In any case, I want to play as much as I can, I want to film as much as I can, I want to share as much as I can. This is a great hobby. I'm glad that there are many people out there that share this hobby with me, that have the same passion, that have the patience of watching my videos. It is because of your nice and positive feedback, and also for the constructive criticism that occasionally comes my way. These are the reasons that make making these videos so rewarding. Keep playing, have fun, keep enjoying this amazing hobby. I hope that 2014 is a great year in gaming for you, in gaming, and well, in everything else too. Happy 2014 and happy gaming.